before his passing brought them out of the woodwork. Of course, Hazel Marie and little Lloyd had proved a blessing to me in the long run, but hardly in the short one. So even though I am not averse to receiving blessings, I could do without any more of that particular kind, which meant that I was determined not to put up with a stunt like that from another husband. Not that I intended to follow Sam around or check up on him or never let him out of my sight, but I thought I could recognize the symptoms of a distracted husband now. Besides, Sam is retired from the practice of law, so he doesn't have the excuse of working late or of meeting a client or of any other alibi for being out of the house. He'd better be where he's supposed to be when he's supposed to be. I'm taking no chances of being made a fool of again, and Sam knows it. At least he ought to, for I've told him often enough. "Julia?" The screen door squeaked as Sam opened it and stepped out onto the porch. "What are you doing out here by yourself?" "Watching the world go by." "Mind if I watch with you?" He smiled as he pulled another rocker up close. "Lots to see this time of day." I couldn't help but smile. There wasn't a soul on the sidewalk, nor had there been more than 2 cars that passed in the last hour. "It'll pick up soon," I said, learning to give back the wry humor that he delighted in. "It's almost rush hour." "So it is." He glanced at his watch. "There'll be a veritable traffic jam when people start heading home. Glad I made it out here in time." He reached over and took my hand. "No regrets?" I rested my head on my unoccupied hand and said, "No, I guess not. It's just that I can't help wondering how it'll all work out." "Worry about today, Julia. If today works out, then tomorrow will too." "Sufficient unto the day? I guess you're right. But you know what they say, marry in haste, repent in leisure." "Good Lord, Julia, if you call what we did marrying in haste, how long do you think we should have strung it out? I started courting you almost from the time old W.L. was buried." "You did? Well, I'm sorry, Sam. I didn't notice." Then, fearful of having hurt his feelings, I quickly added, "But you have to admit, I had a few other things on my mind. Namely, the discovery of Wesley Lloyd's rascally nature and what it had produced in the form of Hazel Marie and little Lloyd, which of course Sam knew all about since he had helped me through most of it." "No," I went on, "I'm not talking about the length of your courting efforts. I'm talking about our quick jump into marriage without thinking through the consequences. You have to admit that running off to that tawdry all-night wedding chapel in Pigeon Forge and honeymooning at Dollywood, a theme park of all things, constituted a spur-of-the-moment decision. If that's not marrying in haste, I don't know what is." "Well, I don't want you repenting in leisure or any other way. What's bothering you, Julia? If I can make it right, I will." "Some of it's Lillian. She's unhappy. She and James just can't seem to get along. And I can't blame James. He's been looking after you for so long, it's natural that he'd resent somebody else coming in. But they're at each other all the time, Sam, and I wonder if I should have asked Lillian to work here, except I don't know what I'd do without her." "Would she be happier with Hazel Marie and little Lloyd?" "I don't know. Maybe. She misses that child something awful, even though she still has Letitia, probably for the duration, since that little girl's mother is showing no signs of sending for her." Letitia was Lillian's great-grand, as she called her, and had been in Lillian's care for some months now, ever since her mother decided to head for the bright lights of New York. I smiled, recalling how Letitia, barely 6 years old, had ridden the log flume at Dollywood 24 times, then came home telling everybody she was ready for another honeymoon. Starting the chair rocking again, I couldn't help but think how our rush to marry had been so woefully lacking in any long-range planning. "I thought," I went on, that with her house finished and Letitia needing supervision, Lillian would welcome more time at home, with just you and me to do for, and James to help. She has a much easier time of it, and for the same salary, too. Instead, she's moping around like she's on her last legs, and giving James the evil eye whenever she can. And, I went on, giving him a glance, James is doing the same to her. If she's that unhappy, why don't you see if she wants to go back to your house? I expect Hazel Marie would love to have her. I know she would. Why, Sam, Hazel Marie couldn't cook a decent meal if her life depended on it. I worry about that child getting the proper nutrition. But to let Lillian go? I couldn't do that. I'd be all alone over here. Alone? With me here? Sam frowned, showing real distress. I'm your family now, Julia. You're not ever alone with me around. Well, I wouldn't tell him, but I could do with a little more aloneness than he was giving me. Lord, I'd forgotten about how arduous it was to get a sound sleep with another body in the bed. But that was something I wasn't ready to say, particularly since he seemed to take such comfort in having me near. But I'll tell you the truth, such close contact is hard to put up with every night of the week. I'd thought that a late-in-life marriage would entail little more than having a friend to talk to and discuss things with, and of course have by my side for social engagements. But to my consternation, I'd found that Sam had more than companionship on his mind. But the fact of the matter was that I missed my own home and the people in it. I missed the activity and the give and take among us and that little boy's heart-lifting smile. Oh, of course, little Lloyd turned up at Sam's just about every day, but visiting together is not the same as living together. But to answer Sam, I said, I know I'm not alone. It's just that here we are, two old people sitting around by ourselves. We're not old, Julia. Sam leaned over and lowered his voice. Don't you know you've put a spring in my step and a sparkle in my eye? And don't you know that I don't like referring to such things in the light of day? I declare, Sam, you beat all I've ever seen. Where's your mind, woman? All I'm referring to is being in your company. But, he went on, if you have certain things on your mind, I'd be glad to accommodate you. If you don't behave yourself, I'm going in the house. You can just sit out here by yourself and wave to the cars. I sounded severe, but he knew me well enough to know it was all I could do to keep from laughing. That's what the man did to me, and I guess that was the reason I'd married him in spite of my misgivings. Take that night barely a month ago when he'd swept away all my inhibitions with his sudden insistence that we drive over the mountain to Tennessee and marry before sunup. At the time, the whole idea was so tantalizing that I hadn't stopped to think of what I was getting myself into. Why, we didn't even tell a soul what we were doing, just took off in the dead of night and eloped. I still couldn't get over how I'd done something so unlike myself. I, who had always preferred things done decently and in order, and as close to Emily Post's recommendations as it was possible to get, had just thrown caution to the winds. To tell the truth, the whole thing had been like having an out-of-body experience. Not that I go in for all that New Age claptrap, but it was as if I had watched somebody else stand beside Sam and promise to love and honor, but not to obey, I assure you, him until death did us part. I didn't get back into my right frame of mind until the next morning, when I looked at the two of us in the cold light of day and realized that I'd become tangled up again in the ties that bind. When our one-line wedding announcement came out in the local paper several days later, why, you can imagine what a splash it made all over town. As soon as we got home, Mildred Allen called to tell me that the announcement should have included the schools Sam and I had attended and all the clubs we belonged to, as well as the committees and panels we'd sat on. People read those things, Julia, she'd said, and they want to know. Then Emma Sue Ledbetter had dropped by, all red-eyed and splotchy. Her feelings were mortally wounded because we hadn't been married in the